Shannon Burns. I'm new on the board this year, and I'm really excited to be part of this organization. And I have to admit that it wasn't that I forgot pictures or that I didn't get them done in time. I completely forgot that anyone even asked me to do it. So sorry about that. In my day job, I teach adult professional ethics. And teaching ethics to adults is really just about helping all of us see that we can be just a little bit better every day. And what I know now is that our ethics are founded on our values, and our values come from our childhood. So the values that we all grew up with in childhood were unconscious. You didn't know when you were out in the woods or whatever it was you were doing as a child. You didn't know that you were shaping your values and becoming who you are today, but that's what happened. And because they happened in childhood, all of our values are unique and individual and varied. But they also are shared. And one of the beauties of being an adult is that you come together because of shared values. So one of the things I know is that all of the values that we share in this room today have to do with outdoors and nature, protecting land, protecting water. So you might just take a minute now and think about where those values came from in your childhood. I came to my values of appreciating the outdoors early in life. I was born on the coldest day in 1954. And from the time I was 4 days old, my mother bundled me up, put me in a buggy, and walked me around the block. She did that every day until I was old enough to walk myself, and then she bundled me up and dragged me along. I grew up camping and fishing. I'm the oldest of 5 kids. We had no money, but we had the outdoors. So from the end of April until the end of October, literally every weekend, my dad would come home, we would throw sleeping bags in a tent in the car on Friday night, we would take off for a state park and come home Sunday night. Those were our weekends. If any of you in here know where the Cherry Valley Mall is up by Rockford, I grew up fishing in a creek that used to run right through where that mall is now. And one of my favorite outdoor memories, in 1965, my family was camping in a campground in the Rocky Mountain National Park up by the Continental Divide. There were 3 other families up there, and we had a blizzard. We got snowed in. And the Forest Service had to come, and they dropped down on us with helicopters. They dropped down firewood and matches and blankets, and oddly, packages of uncooked Oscar Mayer hot dogs. So back then, no one told me that nature or land or the outdoors was important, but it just kind of became part of who I am. And now as an adult, I look back and I see clearly that a value that I have today came out of something I knew but didn't know as a kid. And that was the value of the importance of protecting what can't be replaced. Now, I didn't know I was developing that value, but anyone in here who grew up camping, we all heard, leave the campsite a little better than it was when you found it so that the next person can do the same. Well, what I now know is that that brought to me as an adult a value or an ethic or a way of behaving as a better person. To look for things that can't be replaced and then do what I can to make sure they can stay as good as they are. I carried my values about nature and the outdoors and my love of being outdoors with me to this day. No matter what I'm doing, I'm never happier than when I'm outside. All of the volunteer work I do, no matter what the weather is, no matter how bad the bugs are, or what kind of thicket of multiflora rose I've wandered into, I am just never happier than when I'm outside. So as an adult, I see now that my kid experiences taught me a lot more than a love of the outdoors. These experiences gave me some values that made me, they didn't just shape me, they actually made me who I am today. And if you think about it, I bet your experiences as a child helped to make you who you are as an adult as well. One of the values I learned as a kid that I now am consciously aware of is the importance of keeping my heart open. I can't believe I'm going to say this because I really don't like musicals, but I learned from nature that the sun always does come out tomorrow. It's true. You know, how many of us have had a day that just didn't go right? And then tomorrow is better. And you see that in nature. No matter what goes wrong in my personal life, I know that there's always a new day tomorrow because the sun always does come up. I also learned from nature at an early age that hard work and play are the same thing. I began to understand early on that studying from books is really fun, but you don't really know something until you do it with your hands. You get out and work hands-on, then you really learn something. Maybe the most important thing I learned from nature is something we all know, that patience and acceptance is really the bedrock of life. Anybody in here who's ever planted a tree and then waited 10 years to get 1 inch of shade knows what I'm talking about. So there's a little kind of side part of me that I don't talk about much, but I'm going to admit it here if I dare. And that is that all of this love of nature did not come out of an interest in clean water and clean air, or even saving land. But you know what, that's okay, because when you appreciate nature, and when who you are is aligned with your values of caring about the world, good things naturally happen. I know as an adult that when our values are aligned with who we are, good things naturally occur. And then we do have clean air and fresh water and protected land. So some of you came to nature as I did as a kid. Some of you it was later in life. The point is that none of you would be here today with us unless you didn't share a value about the importance of open space and land and clean air and fresh water and all of the things that the Conservation Foundation stands for. So now's when I'm going to talk to you about money. But before I do that, I want to just again talk about values for 1 second. The time to fund what you value is right now. The time to put your money, whatever you can afford to give, in line with who you are, is right now. Funding your values gives you ownership of who you are. I didn't know this as a kid, but as an adult, at some point I got old enough to start making financial contributions to things that I valued. And what I found is that those contributions almost always went to things to protect land or to protect nature or to serve the environment. For me, being able to make a financial contribution began to bring me full circle in a way I didn't realize until recently. But all of my volunteer work, all of my recreational time outside, all of the good memories that I have tied to being a childhood that I brought with me into being a happy person as an adult, plus the chance to protect what can't be replaced by giving a financial donation, in some way completed me as a person. It brought my values and my enjoyment and who I am full circle. When I could say to myself and to other people, I can contribute some of my hard-earned money to this cause because it is that important that it's not just for me, but it stays available for the future. I want to make one more point before I get to the actual giving part of this, and that is that when I was getting my doctorate, I had to take some classes in being effective on voluntary boards of directors. And the classes, you know how classes are. They always talk about the ideal. And I spent a long time looking for an organization that really was an ideal chance for me to be on a board of directors. And I found that with the Conservation Foundation. This is an amazing organization, and I'm new. I've only been on the board a year. So I'm looking at it with new eyes, and I'm looking at it from having brought all this book learning to this hands-on work. And what I can tell you is that when you make a donation to this organization, you are not just funding saving land and saving rivers. What you are doing is funding an efficient and highly functional vehicle to meet your goals and your values of protecting land and saving rivers. This is an organization that I'm proud to be part of for many reasons, but one reason that's really important to me, nobody wants to waste their time. But I can tell you that volunteers, staff, and the board members of the Conservation Foundation, every single decision that's made, every single activity that they do, every single dollar that comes in is focused in a beeline dead ahead to the mission of the organization. And it's rare to find an organization that anyone can say that about. So having said all of that, you've heard not just my story, but some other stories from Conservation Foundation people today. It's my privilege now to ask you to make a financial investment that will support the financial work that the Conservation Foundation does. This year, we are continuing a very successful Strengthening Our Foundation initiative that we began in 2014. If you've been inspired by what you've heard today and you'd like to support the needs of the Conservation Foundation, I invite you to join me in participating by donating to the Strengthening Our Foundation